Welcome to this Premier Training revision video that takes a closer look at the written tasks. This is part 1 of a 3-part video, and in parts 2 and 3 we'll look at some typical answers to the written tasks. But first, in part 1, we'll show you how to prepare your answer. In all units at the professional level and some of the units at the advanced level, you'll be required to write your answers in words rather than carry out any calculations. Many students fear these tasks, but they're an opportunity to show how you would apply your knowledge to real-life situations. So if you understand the topics, you should be able to do well in the written tasks. All units at both these levels will require you to demonstrate your knowledge of the ethical principles for accountants. This is another feared topic, but it's very important. Working in the financial sector, accountants, including student accountants, have extra responsibilities over and above those of the general public, and you don't want to find yourself with a criminal record through ignorance. So let's look at a typical question on ethics. If you'd prefer to look at a hard copy of this question, pause the video now and print it off by clicking the button below. The first mistake students generally make is not reading the question properly. It's easy to skim the question and think that this question is about money laundering. And whilst it is, that's only part of it. There shouldn't be any irrelevant or useless information in the question, so let's look at each part. First, we see that the scenario is about Heather Beck, and you'll need to refer to her in your answer. Next, we see that Heather works in an accounting practice, so she'll have to adhere to the Code of Professional Ethics. And Heather is also working on the accounts of Clark Limited, and you'll need to refer to this company in your answer. It's a limited company, and whether this is relevant here remains to be seen, but you should keep it in mind. So this is the problem you have to deal with. Heather has noticed a payment of £30,000 for office stationery. And just in case you didn't spot it, the question states that this is a problem. Now we see that Heather's manager is also involved. In other words, it's her boss who tells her not to worry about it. And when someone tells someone else not to worry in a question like this, it's a sure sign that they should worry. The mention of a personal friend should also rouse some possible ethical issues you've learnt in your studies. So even before we've got to the end of the question, we should already have some idea of what we can write about. But be careful. Look at what the question requires from you before you go headlong into an answer. So now we need to look at the part of the question which tells us what we should do. Explain is probably the most important word to make a note of. All of the key words in the written tasks are covered in the Premier Training booklet How to Approach the Extended Writing Task, which you can find in your Premier programme. Firstly, any legal issues raised need to be explained. This means you need to know the laws relating to accounting, and here it will probably be the money laundering regulations from looking at the scenario. You won't be expected to quote legislation word for word, but you will be expected to know what's involved for you, your client, and your boss. Ethical issues shouldn't be a surprise, as all questions will include something about ethics. However, it does tell you that you need to explain more than just about money laundering. And you shouldn't be surprised by the reference to the fundamental principles. This is almost a certainty in ethics-based questions. The fact that it says fundamental principles and not fundamental principle should alert you to the fact that there'll be more than one. Specifically, the threats means you need to use the correct jargon. We've already spotted a possible familiarity threat, but be open-minded as there may be others. We also need to explain what Heather needs to do, so it's confirming we need to relate the answers to the scenario. Finally, mention of safeguards should also be expected. But the question here is asking you to relate it to the scenario, so the answers must be relevant and practical. Again, it's safeguards and not safeguard, so we'll need more than one suggestion. I hope you found this video helpful, and don't forget to look at the second video in this series, which will look at possible answers to the questions discussed here. Thanks for watching.